you don't think it can happen to you.
The hit-and-run chase in California, a motorcycle rider witnessing a driver slam into several cars and then speeding away.
It can happen to you within seconds, a blink of an eye.
Tonight about the man suspected of killing a woman in a hit-and-run and his plan to evade justice.
When you take your eyes off the road for just seconds, when you're driving your car, oh, yes, it can happen to you. See, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. When the sands of time will run out within your hourglass.
New at 10, a hit and run caught on video, and now a teenager and his family are looking for the driver who took off.
He was a victim of a distracted driver hitting the road while riding his motorcycle going 65 miles per hour. He nearly lost his life. Now on a crusade to help save lives and prevent someone else from becoming a victim, the creator of DistractedDriversBusted.com and now the host of this podcast, it's Howard Drescher.
All right, welcome. Welcome to another show of DistractedDriversBusted.com, the podcast show. I am your host, Howard Drescher, the creator of DistractedDriversBusted.com, and of course now this podcast. And you can follow me on Twitter at DistractedDBTV, at DistractedDBTV, and of course on Facebook, DistractedDB. And you can get not only this show, but all my past archive shows on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Amazon, TuneIn. Just use the keyword DistractedDB. I want to thank everybody who's been listening to my podcast over the last couple of years, and that the word is definitely getting out about my podcast. My podcast has now reached a new high number, and we will get to that probably the next show. I did not bring up the new data, but I did bring up two new states that chimed in. Iowa has been the first time for them, and I want to say it was Wisconsin, but I think Green Bay's in Wisconsin, so I don't think it was Wisconsin, but I will get that to you. But Iowa, welcome, and I want to thank you all for listening, and I do appreciate each and every one of you listening to the podcast as we do them each and every week as much as we can. I know there's been a couple of weeks that I haven't done it. I've been kind of sick, plus also my work schedule, but nevertheless, I still keep up with what is going on in the world of distracted driving. And if I am not able to do a podcast for the people that know and that people that follow me, and I follow them, I see what's going on Facebook and Twitter, and I appreciate what they're doing, because I'm here behind the mic, but there is a lot of other people out there that are doing really great things. There are people out there doing great things, but then on the other hand, we have a lot of other people that are still doing the wrong thing. Things that should not be happening, things that are putting lives in danger, not only their lives, other people's lives. And it happens each and every day because they feel whatever they're doing is more important than what you, me, or somebody else might do. Because they're the ones that are speeding. They're the ones that are texting and driving. They're the ones that are sipping the old Starbucks drink out of their car. They're the ones that are eating. They're the ones that are putting the makeup on. They're the ones that are, reading the newspaper. Guys, you're shaving. I've seen it. It is so crazy what people are in their own little world, their own little bubble, and that's all they want to see, and that's all they want to deal with. And if you get out of my way, that'll be great. And if you don't, I'm going to get around you one way or the other, whether I tailgate you to get you to move, or you just move on your own because you see that I'm speeding and I am tailgating you for like the last 5 miles and you're not getting it. Or I decide I flash my high beams on and off to annoy you and get you out of my way. This is a continuation that I see each and every day out here in California. I cannot speak for other states. I am going to reach out to some of the people that have been listening to me and that have been following me, and I would like to try to get them in the next couple of weeks on my podcast show and talk to them as far as what they have experienced in the rudeness when it comes to driving and other drivers. Not that they're doing anything wrong, but what they have perceived is done to them by other drivers. And I see it. I know it's out there. It's just never going to end. And unfortunately, it's never going to end until either one, we all go back to horse and buggy, or just ride horses. That's it. We're not going to get anywhere remotely back to where people care about each other. You know, people have a tendency to care about each other when there's a big tragedy. Well, how about care about them before that tragedy happens? And I've talked about it before in the past. Something happens, everybody rallies around them for about a day or two. How could this happen? This guy's a good person. They shouldn't have been killed this way. This girl, this woman is a perfect example of what a daughter would be, a wife, how she's supposed to be, a husband doing the right thing, just going to work, a grandmother, grandfather, grandmother, just going to work, getting hit. And drivers just speed off like, hey, no real big deal. Well, it is starting to be a big deal. And I'm still looking into basically what California is doing to revamp that. They said about a week or two ago that they are putting up new rules, new guidelines. They're refreshing what was old to make it new again. I don't know if that's working yet. Maybe they haven't even started planning it, but I got to find out, and I'm going to look into it over the next week or so. And hopefully I can put something together with you, for you, on my next podcast, or my next podcast 1 or 2. I can't really say for sure, because apparently sometimes I plan certain things and certain things fall through the cracks. Anyways, you're listening to DistractedDriversBusted.com, the podcast show. I am your host, Howard Drescher. And I want to tell you that I appreciate everybody who listens to this podcast show. Iowa, welcome. Welcome to the podcast show. Spread the word about this podcast show. You're listening to DistractedDriversBusted.com, the podcast show. I'll be back right after this.
You've been putting back a few, and a few becomes a few too many. For a moment, you think about going for a ride. Nah, you live nearby. What's the worst that can happen? You get pulled over, your insurance goes up, you lose your license, you total your car, you kill someone.
Hey, there's no way you can hide it. If you drive drunk, they're gonna find you. So stop kidding yourself.
Sir, have you been drinking tonight?
Sir, have you been drinking this evening?
Sir, have you been drinking tonight?
They will catch you and arrest you. Drive sober or get pulled over.
All right, welcome back to DistractedDriversBusted.com, the podcast show. I'm your host, Howard Drescher, the creator of DistractedDriversBusted.com, and of course, now this podcast show. You follow me on Twitter at DistractedDBTV, at DistractedDBTV, and of course on Facebook, it's DistractedDB. And like I said earlier, you can get this show, plus all my past years' archive shows on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Amazon, TuneIn, and there may be a couple more that I'm not aware of. I'm always reaching out, trying to find other people that will put my product out there for other listeners, some way, shape, or form. And I appreciate that. Just use the keyword DistractedDB, and you'll get all that information just readily handy to you. And when it comes to California, I just want to say the CHP needs your help. The CHP down there in Riverside, California, I'm in Riverside County, so therefore that kind of falls within my area. Riverside is probably about 25 miles away from basically where I live, and they're asking for your help. They're asking for your help to identify a driver involved in a hit and run crash in Riverside. And this story comes from at KCAL News. KCAL News, they're the sister station of CBS News out here in Los Angeles. And KCAL News, I appreciate you guys for allowing me to use the sound.
Investigators in Riverside County are looking for a driver who hit and killed a person and then just took off.
This happens way too often. KCAL News' Summit editor Mike Rogers is now at the desk. Mike, what are the circumstances here?
Yeah, we were just getting an update from the California Highway Patrol out there in their Riverside office. They tell us that a driver was on the side of the road trying to put gasoline in his car when a second driver hit him and then fled. I want to come to my computer here and we'll show you exactly where this happened. This happened on the 215 just south of the 91 early this morning, just before 2 a.m. Now, CHP says there was a Chevy Silverado on the right shoulder when a blue Honda SUV or truck sideswiped that Chevy, hitting and killing the driver, and then took off. Now, that driver has been identified as a 38-year-old man from Lake Elsinore. We don't have his name just yet. He did die there at the scene. Now, as we come back out here to the desk, the CHP tells me that the suspect driver, the person who allegedly hit this driver, did leave several car parts behind. There apparently was some sort of collision there where car parts from the suspect vehicle were left on the side of the freeway. Now, I've asked the CHP what exactly those car parts were. They say they are going to withhold that information in hopes that somebody can come forward and give that to them that maybe a suspect or may know some things. Oftentimes, they'll do that in cases they need a little bit of information to hold back, and CHP says that's what they're doing here. So if you know anything about this crash on the 215 just south of the 91 freeway early this morning, CHP is looking to hear from you. It should be a blue Honda SUV or truck with right side damage, guys.
All right, thanks for the info, Mike.
All right, and again, thanks to KCAL News. I appreciate them for allowing me to use the sound. KCAL News is a sister station of CBS 2 in Los Angeles. Again, early in the morning, somebody's trying to get gas into their car. They ran out of gas. Somebody knows, somebody may have seen something. They're still needing your help. If you know anybody who's got readily car damage to their vehicle, they're gonna go ahead and try to get it fixed. Obviously, that's obviously the key point right there. What they're trying to do is get it fixed, and it is kind of disturbing when you see things like this happen. But yet, this, like they mentioned in the news, the first few seconds of the opening report indicated that the CHP is asking for your help. And then the other reporter indicated, this happens more frequently than it should have. Or it happens more than what you think. It's still happening way too much. And yet, if it doesn't affect you, you're oblivious to what's going on. If you're around this kind of stuff and you see it and you pay attention and you really, really pay attention, you would be shocked, you would be stunned exactly on how many times this happens. And it's not for the fainted heart. People have died. The guy from Lake Elsinore is only like 15 miles. Lake Elsinore is 15 miles from where I live. And a young man, or the elderly man, or the gentleman died. And just like that, he's gone. Now, what about his family? Somebody's paying for that. His family's paying for that. He ended up dying, and now somebody lost a father, a husband. And it's just like that. It happens at a blink of an eye. As you hear in my opening that Gina does for me, it's a blink of an eye. It can happen within a blink of an eye. And believe you me, it happens more than you know. And yet here we are trying to figure out, how can we fix it? How can we do something to make it better so we're not that bad off? But yet it still just continues each and every time. All right, when we come back, a driver's in custody. And this story comes from Boston. We'll be back right after this.
You're listening to the DistractedDrivers.com podcast. We'll be right back.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have arrived in Philadelphia. Local time is 3:05 p.m. and the temperature is 67 degrees. At this time, you are now free to use your cellular devices.
You know that feeling when you get to turn your phone on after the plane lands? You can have that feeling every time you drive. Make sure your cell phone is stowed away whenever you are behind the wheel.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
Wake up and text. Text and eat. Text and catch the bus. Text and miss your stop. Wait. Text and be late to work.
Sorry, I'm late.
Text and work. Text and pretend to work. Text and act surprised when someone calls you out for not working.
Who, me?
Text and meet up with a friend you haven't seen in forever.
Hi.
Oh, hey.
Text and complain that they're on their phone the whole time. Text and listen to them complain that you're on your phone the whole time. Text and whatever. But when you get behind the wheel, give your phone to a passenger. Put it in the glove box. Just don't text and drive. Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Now, back to the DistractedDrivers.com podcast.
All right, welcome back to the DistractedDriversBusted.com podcast show. I'm your host, Howard Drescher, the creator of DistractedDriversBusted.com. And, of course, now this podcast show, as I mentioned earlier, you can follow me on Twitter at DistractedDBTV, at DistractedDBTV, and, of course, on Facebook, DistractedDB. And wherever you get your podcast from, just use the keyword DistractedDB, and you can get not only this show, but archive shows. And if you know somebody along the way, somebody that needs or somebody that wants to be a guest on my podcast show, just have them reach out to me either on DistractedDB or on my Facebook, DistractedDB. And just IM me, DM me, or whatever they call it nowadays. Just contact me. I'll reach out and talk to you and see if we can set up something to get your story out there, because your story is just as important as what I'm talking about. You know, and to you it might be more important because it's really about you or somebody that you may have lost, or somebody that's in a hospital based on the fact that somebody did something wrong and hit your family member. I don't get too many calls for the perpetrator. I've reached out to a couple of different people. They don't want to talk to me. They don't want to deal with me. They feel that I'm dangerous, that I will exploit them for what they are. You know, little bozos, little dumbasses, people that have no brains. And yet, they definitely will not be on my show. But I'm going to still keep on reaching out to them. All right, you're listening to DistractedDriversBusted.com, as I mentioned. I want to welcome WCVB Channel 5 in Boston for this next sound. And I think this is the first time that I have used these guys, this TV station. And again, I want to thank them for allowing me to use the sound. A driver's in custody in a 4-year-old's hit-and-run crash that, well, quite honestly, you know, when you're dealing with children, what could happen?
This video appears to have played a key role in finally connecting the suspect to the devastating crime. A neighbor says this is 30-year-old Olgene Joseph walking around the car outside his apartment. This image shows it parked in the driveway days before the crash, and police say it's the same car that hit and killed 4-year-old Ivan Pierre.
The cooperation from the public is how we're able to really solve crime.
The suspect's neighbor says he eventually connected the dots after police released this video of the suspect's car, and he called in the tip, bringing relief to the boy's neighborhood.
I was right there when the boy got hit, so it was good that the guy turned himself in.
Police say Joseph turned himself in this afternoon after they issued a warrant for his arrest. A police report says he had recently purchased the gray Chevy Spark involved in the crash and then allegedly washed and returned it with a dent on the hood 2 days after the boy was killed. The arrest finally answering some unsettling questions as family and neighbors continue to mourn the loss of the young boy.
But I think it's a first good step in terms of getting justice. You can't replace the life of a 4-year-old child.
And that suspect now facing a number of charges. He is due to face a judge tomorrow.
All right, and again, that story comes from the WCVB Channel 5 in Boston, and I appreciate them for allowing me to use the sound. Again, a life is taken away. Somebody who's trying to do the wrong thing, wash the vehicle, clean it up a little bit, trade it back in, say he doesn't want the car, trying to cover up his crime. And yet, with good police work and the good neighbors around the house where he lived at, his neighbors did the right thing. And quite honestly, this guy is what I'm talking about, who really doesn't care about anybody else except for himself. The only question I would have to ask is if that gentleman, what would happen, how would he feel if it was one of his family members that were struck by a vehicle and they did the same exact thing, cleaned up the vehicle, sent it back, and acted like, hey, what are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about. I turned my car in. Yeah, how would he feel if somebody took out somebody from his family? That's what I'm talking about. If you end up getting involved in a crash, just stay where you are. It may not be your fault. Somebody could have darted out in front of you. You hit the brakes the best you could, or fast or as hard as you could, and accidents do happen. But now that you've did what you've did and took off, did what you did, now you're facing felony charges, depending on what state you are, 5 to 15 years in jail, if not more, and at least $10,000 to $20,000 fine. It's not worth it. They're going with society, with cameras everywhere. They know who has the vehicles. It's just a matter of time before they end up finding out who did what. And it is a shame that it still happens the way it does. It doesn't need to happen this way. If you go ahead and stay and not take off, there's a good chance that you're not at fault. And if you're not at fault, it's all good. But if they do find you at fault, at least you stayed. At least you're not a wanted man or a wanted woman. You're not facing felony charges. Just the local charges. And it could be just a slap on the wrist, maybe a fine, or they could let you go. But if you stay, face the consequences up front, it's better than running and finding out a year, 2 years down the road, like in this case, 2 days from when it happened, you turn yourself in because they put a warrant out for your arrest. You turn yourself in. Now you're facing felony charges. That doesn't bode well. It's a matter of choice. You have a choice to make at that exact time. Don't make the wrong choice. When you make the wrong choice, the consequences are even greater. And if you end up and continuously doing the wrong thing, it will catch up with you. And when it does, there's nothing that anybody can do for you except lock you up and put away the key. All right, you're listening to DistractedDriversBusted.com, the podcast show. I'm your host, Howard Drescher, the creator of DistractedDriversBusted.com, and of course now this podcast show. The next story comes from ABC 13. From 13 ABC. They're on your side. 1 killed, 2 hurt. Police are searching for the driver. And again, this comes from 13 ABC. On your side.
Police are continuing to search for the driver involved in a hit-and-run crash that killed a 14-year-old boy and left 2 other teens injured. 13 on your side's Jeremiah Brown is live near Greenville. Jeremiah, what are police saying right now?
Veronica, behind us here off of Wise Road in the Greenville area is where a car struck 3 boys before fleeing from the scene. We know that one of the boys was 14 years old and was pronounced dead at the scene. 2 other boys that were injured are being treated at Helen DeVos Children's Hospital. The tracks can be seen in the yard where a car that authorities believe is a Volkswagen Jetta struck the 3 boys. Neighbors who witnessed the aftermath but were too emotional to speak on camera said that this has rocked their community and that the boys are from the Greenville area.
It's a tragic incident. Our hearts go out to the families, and we just ask that the driver of this vehicle please come forward. Let us find some resolution for this family. Right now, it's a matter of interviewing individuals throughout the area, canvassing the neighborhood, looking for those types of vehicles that are registered in the area so that we can try to locate the driver.
According to state police, the road is under construction but is open to drivers. State police are confident that they will be able to find the driver through help from the community. The police are looking for a Volkswagen Jetta with damage to the front and to the windshield. They're asking for anyone with any information to contact the state police Lakeview post with the number on your screen. Live from Montcalm County, Jeremiah Brown, 13 on your side.
All right, 13. ABC, on your side. Thank you very much for allowing me to use the sound. They need closure. They need closure. A 13 or 14-year-old boy was killed. 2 other hospitalized. The driver took off. Just, if you stayed there, you may have not. If you watched the video, I think they were skateboarding on the road. And I think the car drifted over into their lane, hit them. It's a very sad and tragic story in any event. But if he stayed there, it might have been cleared up. Now that you're running, it's a felony. And if you noticed in the last couple of shows, there's a lot of teens that are getting killed. There's a lot of teens that are getting killed. There's a lot of infants that are getting killed. There is way, way too many people that are getting killed. It's a tragedy. But people need closure. They need to close the loop on this. Again, a Jetta that has damage to the front side and also to the windshield. There has to be somebody out there who's trying to get their vehicle fixed. Call the law enforcement agencies in your area there, Greenville. And I believe it's Greenville, and it could be North Carolina, I believe. I'm just have to double check with my producer on that. But here's the thing. It just doesn't seem to fit the pattern of the good old days of driving. Courtesy, kindness, fairness. Let the people in front of you change lanes. Let the people, make a left-hand turn when they're supposed to. Just don't drive through the intersection. When you see passengers or when you see pedestrians, slow down. That's all it takes. Slow down. It's like coming up on a construction site. You're not going to be zipping through a construction site where they've chopped down the lanes to 1 lane out of a 3-lane. They take 2 lanes away. You're not going to be zipping through there like 50, 60, 70 miles an hour. Please. You've got to have common sense. Have common sense, folks. All right, you're listening to DistractedDriversBusted.com, the podcast show. Again, Iowa, thank you. Thank you for following me and having some listenership in Iowa. I appreciate that. Iowa is doing a good job. I know that they have some good drivers out there. I want to thank everybody who listens to my podcast. I appreciate each and every one of you. And remember, I don't want to die today. Do you? Go ahead. Go ahead and let people know about this show. The more that hears about it, the better it will be. Until the next week or the next show, please be safe.